Gone Girl is one of the most red-pilled mainstream movies of all time. When I saw this movie, I couldn't believe that it had been released. Gone Girl is, to put it simply and in crude terms, based as fuck. Gone Girl is so based, as I said, I can't believe this film was actually released. If the alt-right had produced a movie about women, it would be Gone Girl. I think the basic premise of Gone Girl is to explore white knighting. Now, for those of you who don't know, what white knighting is it's basically a term for male feminists. Um, Male feminists tend to have this view that um, the male half of the social contract continues to exist even if the female one doesn't. Because traditionally, how things worked is women were subservient to men. That's true. At least in a public sense. And generally speaking, in traditional societies, women had control of the household and indirect control of men, particularly when it came to the children, and just as I said, just inside the home, and men had dominion outside of the home, and there was kind of this balance. In kind of return for that, women were not expected to, if they could help it, work. They got to stay home with the children, which is presented as some sort of horrible thing. That particularly when it started to be economically viable, that women would not have to go work at shitty factory jobs or make PowerPoint presentations all day, but could stay at home with their children. Oh no, spending time with your family. Cooking, it's the worst thing in the world. It's not like working in a fucking mine. But anyways, so they had that privilege. They didn't have to serve in the army. They enjoyed protections from males. Like if someone assaulted their virtue or did anything, their husband would kill the guy or beat the shit out of him. They were assumed to have certain virtues. They got certain, I guess, kind of presumptions about them. That they were more innocent than men or something to that effect. So what happened with feminism is it tore up the female half of the social contract and it removed all female responsibilities and all female standards of behavior. But white knights believe that the male half of the social contract still exists, even though the female one doesn't. And this movie is essentially an exploration of that. I give this movie a 9 out of 10. This was an absolutely amazing movie. If you haven't seen Gone Girl, just go watch Gone Girl. Just don't even watch the rest of this review. Well, come back and watch it. I could use the views, but so the film features Nick and Amy, and yes, those sound like generic kind of like movie characters from like the 1950s or 60s for a reason. It's kind of a bit of a deconstruction of the modern idealized American family. So, the fifth day of his wedding anniversary, Nick, played by Ben Affleck, returns home to find that his wife Amy is missing. There's evidence of a struggle, there's her blood over the place, etc., etc. Her disappearance features extremely heavy press coverage, because Amy was the inspiration for a popular series of children's books called Amazing Amy, which were created by her parents. Eventually, we'll find out that a lot of the money they made was put into a trust fund, but her parents were stupid baby boomers, so they lived a lavish lifestyle that they couldn't afford and invested all of the trust fund money into risky mutual funds. So a combination of their own bad spending, stealing from the trust fund, and basically investing at a high time preference fashion has meant that the trust fund is gone. That'll be important later. So, Detective, we'll just call her Rhonda, or Boney's her last. Okay, we'll call her Detective Boney because Rhonda's hard for me to pronounce for some reason. So, Detective Rhonda walks through the house and discovers poorly concealed evidence of a struggle. The police could conduct a forensic analysis and discover remains of bloodstains, Amy's bloodstains. This leads to the conclusion that Amy was murdered. Suspicions arise that Nick is responsible because who the fuck else is going to be responsible? And he's very awkward. He's a former author who hasn't produced anything for years. He's also having a number of affairs. On top of that, he's just very kind of excessively calm. He's not panicking. And people tend to think he's a sociopath because of that. As we go through, though, we begin to understand why Nick isn't overly upset. Nick and Amy's marriage had disintegrated and they were all but divorced. They had both lost their jobs during the recession and moved from New York City because it was too expensive to Nick's hometown of North Carthage. Um, they had initially been a lot more, how should we say, they had been a lot more in love. It shows kind of some flashbacks. Their relationship appears to be mostly based on the fact that they find each other mutually attractive, and they just like to have sex in public places, including bookstores. I mean, who would anyone want to buy books that these two have fucked on? But that's okay. It's hedonism, so it's all right. You know, back in when I went to university, the school paper put out top list of places to have sex on campus, including desks in the library. And I mean, fuck. Not even from the general degeneracy of just fucking in a public place. I mean, who the fuck wants to see that? Especially given how fat a lot of modern women are. But do you really want to study at a desk that has someone's bodily fluids on it? I know I wouldn't. It's disgusting. Maybe that just makes me some kind of like germaphobe or something. I don't know. I don't like it. So, they lost their jobs and they moved to the hometown of North Carthage, Missouri, because it's cheaper. Nick has become lazy, distant, uninterested, and unfaithful. He buys an Xbox 360, which appears to be the final straw. It really pisses off Amy. She's like, "You can't buy that. You can't play video games. A grown man can't play video games," which is just basically pretty annoying, to be perfectly honest. Detective Boney unearths evidence of financial troubles and domestic disputes. The domestic dispute evidence is largely forged. The financial troubles, well, we'll get into that in a minute. But it appears that Nick has been purchasing massive amounts of goodies for himself and hiding them in the back shed. She also finds a medical report indicating that Amy is pregnant, to which Nick denies knowledge because he actually doesn't know. So it's revealed now in the movie's big twist. The movie has a number of big twists. This is a really fucking depressing movie, so you've been warned. Amy is revealed to be alive, having changed her appearance and gone into hiding in a distant campground. She despises Nick for the erosion of their marital bliss, because she liked when they were popular and the perfect couple. She liked the adoration of praise of other people. Amy is incredibly obsessed with being loved by everyone. She's kind of the stereotypical narcissist, and it turns out that this whole plan was a plea for attention and to punish Nick for not being attentive enough to her. So this is kind of similar to how a lot of women nowadays will do fake rape accusations, particularly against famous people, like the whole Gian Gomeshi thing. It's increasingly looking like a lot of these women just wanted attention and wanted the fame of having been sexually abused by him, which is fucking sick. So they lied or had consensual rough sex with him and then later on took it back. This is pretty common. Maybe a breakup goes badly and women will lodge fake rape accusations against men and ruin their lives. So this is kind of an excessive version of that. Sorry, a more excessive version of that. So, she befriends. Amy has been planning the framing for a long time. She also is mad that they live in the middle of nowhere and she's not publicly loved as much in Missouri. So she leaves evidence. So she faked her own death and fabricates a diary describing her fear of Nick. She basically goes on to tell him how Nick has been physically abusing her, etc., which is completely just bullshit. Um, so she decides that she is going to commit suicide and then have her body found in a river as the final phrase of framing Nick. She goes as far as to kind of beat the crap out of herself to make it look like Nick mutilated her body. It's interesting that she feels no pain, which seems to further the idea that she's actually a psychopath. Because one of the features of psychopathy is an inability to feel pain or a much greater pain tolerance. Whatever wires are crossed in their brain in a different way also do that. So this whole thing is a big a big whatchamacallit setup. So Nick hires Tanner Bolt, who's kind of like Robert. What was his name? I don't know. Whoever the Kardashians' father is, a lawyer who specializes in defending men accused of killing their wives. Nick also meets with Amy's ex-boyfriend, Tommy O'Hara, played by, what's his name again? Neil Patrick Harris. Yes, played by Neil Patrick Harris. Against He also approaches another ex-boyfriend of Amy's, the wealthy Odysee Collins, against whom Amy also filed a restraining order. But Odysee refuses to share any details. As he begins to investigate, he discovers that Amy had used fake rape accusations and fake abuse accusations against Odysee Collins as a way of screwing him over and extorting money from him. I think that was what it was. As I read through the summary, that'll probably be it. So, Amy's neighbors at the campground where she's hiding out steal her remaining money, and she calls. Sorry, guys, I got a bit confused there. Okay, so Tommy O'Hara, her first ex-boyfriend, had been framed for rape and abuse, and she used that to take money from him after she found him boring. Odysee Collins is Neil Patrick Harris, and he's wealthy. So after her money gets stolen, she calls Neil Patrick Harris and says that she ran away because she was scared of Nick and framed her own death. Odysee Collins is obsessed with her, and he takes her to his expensive lake house, which is equipped with all sorts of advanced security systems, including surveillance cameras. So she kind of becomes his mistress and hides out there to see how everything goes. Nick succeeds in convincing his twin sister of his innocence. However, Nick's mistress, one of his students, reveals their affair at a press conference. Nick then decides to go on a talk show to profess his innocence. After getting himself all hyped up, coming up with a big kind of song and dance routine to go through with it, he goes on and delivers the performance of a lifetime. Professing his innocence, apologizing for his failures as a husband, in hope of luring Amy out to kind of profess his innocence. He does such a great job that Amy sees the remnants of the kind of lust for power and fame that had driven her towards Nick in the first place, and rekindles her love with him, deciding to go back to him as part of her plan for fame and fortune. Now, it should be noted that all throughout the movie, everyone turns on Nick. They say Amy was the sweetest girl. Nick is evil. Nick is an ogre. Basically, on TV, they say this is spousal abuse. This is a symbol of misogyny. This is the patriarchy at work. They completely take for granted that Nick killed his wife, despite the fact that it's all circumstantial evidence. I mean, there's no actual evidence he really did it. There's this kind of elaborate, like, treasure hunt that seems to indicate he did it. But the whole thing is just extremely suspicious. There's no presumption of innocence. There's no innocence until proven guilty. The public basically says, "Oh, Nick's not white knighting enough for her. Nick isn't sad enough in public. That means he killed this poor defenseless woman." And there's no thought that she might have framed this. There's no thought that something else might have happened. Basically, Amy can get away with everything she does in this movie because she's a woman, and the public will white knight for her. Even though the fact that she's a cold, hard psychopath, and this whole thing is about getting attention and destroying her husband's life. So, let's see here. So, Amy watches the TV, and she falls in love with Ben Affleck again. Even as he gets arrested for murder. Amy inflicts injuries on herself, which was once again really creepy, and uses Odysee's surveillance cameras to her advantage. She makes it appear that Odysee has kidnapped and abused her. She seduces Odysee and kills him during sex by slitting his throat, then returns home covered in blood, naming Odysee as her captor and rapist, and clearing Nick of suspicion. So Neil Patrick Harris's character is now slimed. Everybody hates him, and he's kind of posthumously convicted for the rape and kidnap of Amy. While this does free Ben Affleck from jail, it also makes sure that so all the blame is laid on him. When the detective questions Amy about her holes in her story, also keep in mind the public news questions Ben Affleck's character and says that he is having an incestuous relationship with his sister because he's close to her. The fact that a man would be close to his twin sisters treated it as incest, which once again kind of shows the degenerate nature of our culture. I mean, can't a man be close to his twin? No, he can't be close to her. If he has another female friend, he must necessarily be having an affair. I mean, Amy can have as many male friends as she wants. She can do whatever the fuck she wants because she's a woman. But Ben Affleck is a white heterosexual male, and that makes him evil. Evil racist. So, the detective questions Amy, revealing holes in her story. She responds, though, that Nick would have ended up on death row due to the detective's incompetence. The FBI decides to white knight for Amy, saying, look, we can't actually investigate this. She's a woman. We gotta let her go. And the detective, who's also female, is like, well, but it's pretty obvious that she committed a crime, and I can prove that this whole thing was a frame-up job. And they're like, look, the public she has a JJ, you gotta let her go. We can't investigate this shit. We can't do our jobs because of the public opinion, because we live in a democracy, so that means the rule of law doesn't exist. All that matters is what primetime news says, and the FBI is apparently beholden to primetime news, so we can't investigate this shit. If it turned out that she had rigged the whole thing, which there's ample evidence to suggest, that would make us look bad. So we gotta, if she has a clit, you must acquit. Sorry if that was very crude, but it's kind of true in this movie. So Amy tells Nick the truth, saying the man she watched pleading for her to return on TV is the man she wants him to become again. Nick shares this with his lawyer, the detective, and his sister, but they have no way to prove Amy's guilt. I'm sure they do, but not enough. Nick intends to leave Amy and expose her lies, but Amy reveals she's pregnant, having artificially inseminated herself with Nick's sperm stored at a fertility clinic. So Nick doubts the child is his and says he will undertake a paternity test. Nick reacts violently to Amy's insistence that they will remain married, but feels responsible for the child. Despite his sister's objections, he reluctantly decides to stay with Amy. The happy couple announces on television that they are expecting a baby, and that they are once again in the center of the limelight, having become the most famous couple in America, and seemingly rebuilding their perfect marriage despite the immense animosity. Once again, this kind of shows the public's willingness to believe anything a woman says, and to act as if this is the 1900s. Amy is a liberated woman, though, and she can do anything, including commit murder, frame someone for murder, frame people for rape, steal money, etc. Nick, however, committed the sin of having an affair with on his psychopathic wife, which I can't really blame him for, to be perfectly honest, considering how much of a psycho she is. But that is worse because he's male than Amy's fucking killing and framing people. And the movie is completely just brutal in its portrayal of how dumb the public is. It's completely and utterly just brutal and relentless in portraying how the public just white knights for female criminals. This is an extremely based red pill movie. This is one of the most based movies I've ever seen. It just condemns the modern media, modern feminism, and just the whole fucking system. This movie is also has great acting, great pacing. You have no idea where it's gonna go. There's all these twists and turns. The ending comes as a complete surprise. You're not sure who's going to win in the end. It's interesting that evil wins in the end of this movie. Evil wins in a convincing way at the end of this movie because good is dumb, as Darth Helmet would say. So I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. This is a great film. I highly recommend watching it. Just go watch it after you watch this. Listen to this review. It's pretty good. Let's see here. Someone called it a crystallization of 1,000 misogynist fears about female behavior. Um, so yeah, I think this is a good movie. I hope you enjoyed the review. I'll talk to you guys later. This is Argent.